Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Objective. And we've got an interesting show today. We're going to be talking about a guy who, not that long ago, sort of stood as one of the few things standing between the Republican Party as it is today and kind of what it was. He was sort of one of the, I guess, Tea Party candidates, I guess, class of 2010, you could call him. I think that was the year he was elected. Him and people like Marco Rubio and many others, I think, were supposed to be like the opposition to Obama's big socialist agenda and all of that. And looking back, everything wrong with Obama, economics wise, is not that radical in the light of what a lot of Republicans are turning into today. And unfortunately, Ted Cruz, who at one point I think represented one of the sort of spokesmen for the founding principles of America in the individualistic sense, like him and others like him, they would talk about how America is a place where the individual can achieve what he wants to achieve, has an opportunity, where capitalism raised our standard of living, where capitalism has been, given a bad rap, but wrongfully so. There was some reason to sort of be kind of happy about people like Ted Cruz. Now, I think even so, there was a lot of reason to be suspicious and to know that his religiosity would be a stronger guide, or even his partisanship, which was kind of ultimately what I think happened. There was a viral clip in 2015 or 16 when Ted Cruz was running for president, when he spoke to a farmer in Iowa. Now, Iowa, as you may know, is the first place where the primary elections are held. So you win Iowa, you've started off strong. You lose Iowa by a lot, you might lose a lot of donors right then and there. So Iowa is a big one. And Ted Cruz was speaking to a farmer, and the farmer was demanding to know something like, why are you going to cut subsidies to farmers, or something about subsidies, as though like farmers deserve subsidies. We require subsidies to be in business. And who are you to why are you planning to cut them or not to increase them, or whatever it was? And Ted Cruz calmly spoke to the farmer and basically persuaded the farmer to vote for himself. He basically made the case that subsidies are not actually good for the farmer's long-term interest, not good economically, not good for the industry, and why the farmer, like everyone else, is better off in a free market. So it was a very impressive clip from what I recall. And that was what Ted Cruz represented. He was the guy who would stand to speak to somebody in one of the most subsidized industries in America and basically convince him that subsidies are not in his interest, and that capitalism, or something a lot more capitalistic, is the right way to go. That's what Ted Cruz was. He was very, very anti-Trump in those primary elections, and the Trump fans all laughed at Ted Cruz. They called him the Zodiac Killer. They called him a cuckold, which is the nickname for, Republicans that are willing to bend over while the Chinese and the Mexicans all take advantage of America. And that's the way they saw it, and that's the way they saw him. But Ted Cruz, he would not even endorse Trump at the Republican convention. Even then, he said, vote your conscience. Even then, he wouldn't say vote Trump. And then at the 11th hour leading up to the final presidential election in November of 2016, Ted Cruz finally made some phone calls on behalf of Trump, and people were surprised. And then once Trump became president, over a couple of years, Ted Cruz became not only a partisan, not only basically a Trump supporter, but actually, I think, arguably someone who is pushing Trump and the Republicans in the populist direction. Ted Cruz became sort of the face of the anti-big tech movement of the Republicans. Ted Cruz, after he was, by the way, counseled by podcaster Ben Shapiro, and this is something Ben Shapiro has shared, Ted Cruz grilled Mark Zuckerberg over whether Facebook is a platform or a publisher. That is where this whole mishegas first started. It was with Ted Cruz as counseled by lawyer Ben Shapiro. So that's who Ted Cruz became. He's out there saying explicitly that today's big tech, Silicon Valley tycoons, they are modern day robber barons. Robber barons, he is saying. And this is the guy, people like him and Glenn Beck and others, they used to write books and speak about how the so-called robber barons and all the 19th century captains of industry are defamed and wrongfully so. And you back then you could see the influence of people like Ayn Rand and the Austrians when people like Ted Cruz would defend capitalism. Those days are over. At Ted Cruz, he's basically become the worst of the worst. Maybe not as bad as, let's say, Josh Hawley and just a sneering, disgusting populist. But Ted Cruz, considering where he came from, you know, in the yearbook, you could say like most changed, right? Most changed for the worst in my in the way I would put it. It truly is remarkable. So like another Tea Party guy like Marco Rubio also became a protectionist populist, right? Who says, you know, we need to look out for the community before the individual when it comes to economics. So horribly disappointing. But with Marco Rubio, like I think from what I've seen when he speaks about it, he's sort of bashful about it. He's sort of embarrassed by the way he betrayed his principles. With Ted Cruz, it's like he's leading the way. He's leading the way towards populism. So he truly has turned to the dark side. He is, I guess you could say, the Anakin Skywalker of his time. Not that like Ted Cruz ever was like meant to be a great leader and a great Jedi master, because he was always religious. He was always a bit of a compromiser. But considering the fact that Ted Cruz at one point was reading Atlas Shrugged on the floor of Congress as part of his filibuster to block Obamacare, considering that's who he was, it truly is sad to see. He is a traitor, and he's no favorite of mine. Let me just say that. Now let's bring on a couple of co-hosts. We got really the best of the best, two guys who I'm confident will never stab me or capitalism in the back. First off, we got a guy, he's from Chi-Town. Boy, does he know capitalism. He at one point had to explain to Neil Cavuto. Imagine Cavuto works on a business network, a Fox Business, a show about business and economics. And we need Jonathan Hoenig to go on there and explain to him that if the government had blocked the Industrial Revolution the way that today's Republicans are trying to block the development of technology, that we'd all still be farmers. Like, we need Jonathan to explain this to Neil Cavuto. Is that how low we've sunk as a society? Please welcome Jonathan Hoenig.
Thank you, Rucka. I mean, look, Neil's one of the good guys, as you are, as Mark is, and as our active chat is today on YouTube, and as we always are here in the Ayn Rand Center UK. So it's great to be on to talk about an interesting topic, a political topic, but as you said, a philosophical topic, because, you know, when you think of Senator Ted Cruz, the first time I became aware of him was really when exactly, you know, I'm not really that into politics, and was when exactly what you said, and I'm going to share the video, when he read from Atlas Shrugged on the floor of the Senate. We'll take a quick listen to that. Can you hear that?
Not currently, but it doesn't look like it's playing.
No, it is. I just had to do the share sound. See, after a year in friggin' COVID, I'm finally learning it. Here we go.
I'd like to share a few excerpts.
You can hear?
From one of my favorite books, Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand.
One of his favorite books.
Now, let me encourage any of you who have not read Atlas Shrugged to go tomorrow, buy Atlas Shrugged and read it.
All right, so, you know, I mean, when have we ever heard that? A politician stand on the floor? I mean, it was pretty amazing as a kind of longtime objectivist, and really inspiring. And not just because he seemed to be influenced by objectivism. He never claimed to be an objectivist, but because he seemed to be, in Rucka, I think this is maybe alluding to your disappointment, he seemed to be principled. He seemed to be someone who really was motivated by principles. So rare. Not a weather vane candidate just going whichever way the wind is blowing. And I actually had the opportunity to meet Ted Cruz at the 2016 Republican debates. This was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I hope you can see that. That was, if you remember, the field at that point was Trump, Carson, Rubio, Cruz, Bush, Fiorina, Kasich, and Paul. So there I am on the set there. I met, who was that? Howie Kurtz from Media Buzz. That's a shot of me and Howie Kurtz. I met Pat Goodell, recently deceased in blessed memory, Pat Goodell. And I happened to have a chance to meet Ted Cruz. There's Ted Cruz and myself. And You know, he was my favorite candidate at that point. I really never had kind of gone out for a candidate, but he inspired me because of his principles. And if you remember what Trump's reaction to him at that time was stuff like this. I mean, Rucka, you kind of undersold it. I mean, Trump literally accused Cruz's father of helping JFK's assassin, like straight face. That wasn't bullshit. Trump shat on Heidi Cruz's looks. This is from, I mean, these are legitimate things. Trump tweeted like, "Why would the people of Texas support Ted Cruz? He's accomplished absolutely nothing." So, you know, and it was incredibly frustrating to see because it was this emotional outburst from Trump. I mean, honestly, to say anything about your opponent's looks, your opponent's wife's looks, it's disgusting. And around that time, a couple weeks before the election, I was on Fox Business. I hope we have that video here. I'll make this quick. I won't go on too long, but you know, and I was asked about kind of the difference between Trump and Cruz at that point. And
it was happening. We had a live camera there.
Here was the response.
Jonathan Hoenig, I'm sure, did as well. He's our next guest and joins us now. What did you think of that?
Con, great to be with you. Tremendous video to watch, you know, live in real time here on Fox Business. I was not surprised by it. I think you saw what, from my perspective, has really been the defining element here in the GOP race. Reason, as I think is epitomized by Ted Cruz, who I've supported, and emotion, which was epitomized by the Donald Trump supporter here. The Donald Trump supporters, again, they're very full of emotion, they're very full of anger, but emotion is not a tool of cognition. It's not a tool of understanding. And I think Ted Cruz very eloquently laid out the principles, the ideas that not only he supports, but that he's fought for. What did he say for 20 years? Not only as a lawyer, but as a supporter of the Constitution. So this comes down to emotions versus reason.
And Rucka, that kind of gets to what you said. I mean, I remember that thing you talked about, where like he explained it, and he seemed to have that principled kind of sensibility, and that's why I really supported him. And you know what happened? I mean, in kind of a turnaround. I'll share the video later. We've seen enough, but like in a turnaround, like really even worse than Greenspan. I mean, look at this. Like, I don't know, a year and a half later, he's first of all put on a lot of weight. Okay, fine, I don't care about that. But you know, he's friggin' kissing cousins with Donald Trump. And you know, here's the headline: once a foe of Trump, Cruz leads a charge to reverse his election loss. He kind of, I think, helped instigate the riot on the 6th. He's been accused of that by legitimate sources. And more than anything, he gave up his principles. So he's such an utter disappointment. And the fact that it all associated with objectivism, it all associated with Ayn Rand is kind of like a double stab in the heart. A real disappointment, even more than Greenspan. I think he's the kind of the worst. It's just a real disappointment in a decade.
To be fair, I mean, Greenspan studied with Ayn Rand in her apartment, right? Like Ted Cruz never claimed to be like an absolute laissez-faire capitalist or anything like that. But still, it is disappointing. Also, when I see these old things about Trump accusing Ted Cruz's father of killing JFK, and I'm thinking like, how did Trump ever win? Like, how did America ever sink this low? And I've been getting my Trump derangement syndrome, like, sort of retroactively. I sort of ignored most of it at the time and just said, whatever, this is silly. But now I'm like, holy shit, this really happened. Let me bring on.
Yes, please.
Okay. Now we've got a guy who, you know, he's somewhere in the undisclosed location in the middle of the Rust Belt, dressed to play the part of a guy who is tired of being taken advantage of by major corporations and by China. So then maybe he'll offer us a perspective and as part of his character study. Please welcome Mark Pellegrino.
What's up, guys? Well, I seem to remember seeing an old video of a young Ted Cruz on a college campus being asked by the person who was taking the video, "What do you want the most?" And he said, "World domination." Surly looking college kid who said world domination. And I can't help but think that the first thing that falls when that's sort of really your internal mechanism, the first thing that goes away is your principles. I mean, you go to Washington, maybe with the intent, you're telling yourself that you're a principled person who's going to make change. And then the swamp just devours you. You discover you're in a spoiled system, political apparatus, and you got to get it. You got to tribe up, man. And so you stick your finger in the air, you see which tribe is dominant. And I think he saw that Trump was the future of the ailing Republican Party, and principles be damned, he was going to go where the power was, and that's where the power is. Even though I think it's like all expediencies, it's temporary, and it'll gain him very little in the long run, and it certainly gains us nothing.
Certainly,
Well,
internally, he'll never get anything out of this.
I'll quickly just mention Akira Felix. This isn't a super chat, and we appreciate all the super chats. Any super chats today really helps us, as you say, keep the lights on here at the Ayn Rand Center UK. Akira Felix mentioned that Ted Cruz's quoting from Atlas Shrugged was the first time he had ever heard of Ayn Rand. Now here he is on the, so, you know, we always talk about influencers and kind of getting the word out there. So, you know, Ted Cruz on some level really was doing, I think, some good for objectivism in those early days, because he was religious, but he was standing on principle, and the betrayal of those principles. Stephanie asks, you know, when did that happen? When did that, what reasons did he give? My recollection is exactly what you said, Mark, is that basically the political winds shifted, and free market capitalism, which had been very hot, if you will, Ayn Rand, which had been hot during during Obama and the global financial crisis, wasn't very popular anymore. And these politicians, whether it be Lindsey Graham, Cruz, or Rubio, said, look, either I'm going to go home or I'm going to, you know, kind of shift as the way the winds are blowing. And it's just now we
have the added loveliness of people who despise Rand, who don't know her, conflating Rand with people like Ted Cruz and what's his face, the Federal Reserve guy. I just Greenspan, right? These guys now the left or the new left and the crazy critical theorists can say, look, we tried free market capitalism. Look what happened when Greenspan was in office, and look what happened with Cruz, and we've tried this Ayn Rand crap and it just doesn't work. Well, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. These people separated themselves from her philosophy too, for power, to get power.
Yeah, it turns out Ted Cruz was going with the trend. He was a free market guy because that's what got you elected in that state in that year. And then once it was clear Trump is the way of the future of the party, then that's Ted Cruz. It truly is disheartening to kind of realize that was always who he was, especially when you hear he wanted world domination to begin with.
Here's the video quickly to share to get it out. I took of after that debate the evening from, this is an older iPhone, but meeting him and meeting supporters.
There you go. Thank you very much.
Terrific. Great job, Senator. Thank you.
Good job, Senator.
Great job.
Good job, Cruz.
Thank you. Give him hell, Senator.
There was like an optimism about, maybe I'm projecting, but there just seemed to be like an optimism about him. There was a shine about him. There was a positiveness about him. Now there's just this sneering. There's a malevolence. Back then, I thought there was an optimistic principle of benevolence. Thank you, LMH, and thank you, Mary Elaine.
You should see that little home video with him and see how surly he is. I mean, heck, maybe a lot of us were that way when we were in our teens and early 20s. I know I was a little bit dark when I was young, but that essence, I don't think has really left him, whatever he's projecting to the population. And I think that maybe it was more your own optimism and excitement over seeing somebody in the political sphere for the first time talking in a language that you not only understood, but agreed with. So maybe it was partly that, because Ted Cruz is a fraud.
Yeah,
well,
and
his actions have demonstrated that.
Yeah, he plays a dumber character now. Like, he used to be an intellectual, like not like a hyper intellectual, but he used to speak in principles, and it was interesting to watch. And now, like I last time he was on Rubin, I ended up watching it and like reacting to it, pausing it to comment on it. Like, he is playing he's trying to be the salt of the earth guy, because obviously he can't intellectually defend the change that he's made. So he's just becoming this, you know, sit on the couch and watch Fox News kind of American, like, hey man, America is a good place. You know, my dad came here with $20 in his underwear and he became a dishwasher. Yeah, America's good.
First of all, there's nothing wrong with watching Fox News. Let's just put that out there right away, or Fox Business in particular.
Depends on the show and the guest. Let me say present company. Yeah, and Ted Cruz, by the way, has no excuse when it comes to his railing against big tech. He can't like pretend like he doesn't get it. Like he could never say that if he were standing trial before God and say, well, I didn't understand. I'm too old to understand what the internet is. No, he's not that old. And he worked in the tech world at one point. I think he worked at a computer related company. He understands exactly what the internet is. He understands that he's lying when he tries to push for this. He's doing it because it's politically expedient. He could never.
He understands the danger of government regulation, of antitrust, of government breaking a private country. You know, if he's read and understood and appreciates Atlas Shrugged, certainly he understands that. And here we see him in real time betraying those principles in front of our face, as you said, Ruck, for political expediency only.
Yeah, I have a fantasy. I have a fantasy of like at some point the Republicans being sort of embarrassed of what took place, you know, let's say in a decade or something. They're sort of embarrassed by this whole Trump orgy that took place. And someday they're all on a stage doing the primary elections, trying to outdo each other and distancing themselves from the whole Trump train. And Ted Cruz is possible.
Do you think that?
I don't know, but it's a fantasy. And Ted Cruz in this fantasy is up there trying to insist that he was never really he never really sold his soul. And I would just look forward to watching him trying to explain it all.
I mean, the only way that fantasy happens is that the left pretty much controls historical narrative. So they'll hold them accountable for Trumpism. And it'll be a real difficult disease to shake. Because I've never seen a political party yet apologize for its historical faux pas.
What about Bush? Weren't they all distancing themselves from him this last?
Well, yeah, I said a political party. But I've never, you know, certainly the Democrats haven't apologized for slavery, segregation, the KKK, or any of all their racism through the ages. They've just shifted gears and pretended to be the friend of the minority, which they're not.
Right, but for example, haven't Republicans tried to distance themselves from George Bush because of how unpopular he was?
I think the Republicans have a greater variety. There's more room in the Republican camp, since conservatism is more or less aligned with classical liberalism, for free thinkers to be there. I think that's why people who are leaving the left, the liberals more or less, are finding friends on the right, because there's more open thought and so that side encourages individualism in such a way that people within the party can say, hey, screw you, you're an embarrassment. You don't stand for what I stand for. It's so ironic. There's not a great deal of difference between any of them ideologically. It's just that, you know, Trump is personally repugnant to most folks. So, and that's what they're working on. They're just working on off of a personal repugnance.
Jonathan, I want to pass it to you, but I want to reintroduce you by just saying bold move showing us a screenshot of your YouTube page, because those recommendations could have something embarrassing and like you were listening to some music that you're not proud of, for instance. And now we all see recommendation. No, I'm saying that could have happened. So bold move. But I did see a lot of Yaron Brook in your recommendations, and as I recall, he never was going gaga for Ted Cruz, even when some objectivists they were thought, oh, Ted Cruz, wow, who amazing, who would have ever seen this, right? He's reading Atlas Shrugged, but as I recall, Dr. Brook was very reluctant to go anywhere near Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, you think you have to be skeptical of politicians writ large, critical of politicians writ large. And, you know, we kind of go back to this thing of, well, how are we going to get, and to kind of paraphrase Dr. Brook, how we get the positions politicians we deserve. So in my vision, people like, you know, Akira here, who like heard of Ayn Rand probably when he was young, getting some of these ideas together, following the Ayn Rand Center UK, following Prometheus, following Ayn Rand Institute. He's going to get himself in 4 or 5 years. He's going to graduate college. He's going to like get an internship with a politician and be an influence. You know, we need to get objectivism. We need to get self-interest as hot as environmentalism is. We need to get it as cool, as morally righteous as, you know, I just think, what's that line from Mark? Did you ever do Evita? Get them while they're young, Evita. Get them while they're young.
I saw
really
it, but
do.
yeah,
You have to get them, change these ideas while they're young. So I love to see all our younger participants on the chat and being involved with us, because and there's history in Ayn Rand there's a history in the Ayn Rand world. We talked about this before. The draft in America was very heavily, in terms of repeal, thanks to Martin Armstrong, who went to Washington after being part of Ayn Rand's circle. He wasn't part of the collective, but he was a part of her thing, and took that abolished the draft idea to Washington under Nixon, and the draft was abolished largely due to Ayn Rand's influence.
Yeah. By the way, in the chat, we've got Hugh James, who has a picture of Trump as his, profile picture. He says Ted Cruz is standing up to cancel culture and big government spending. As far as cancel culture, I don't want politicians. I don't want people with the power of the gun standing up to cancel culture. If cancel culture doesn't involve guns, as a culture, we need to handle cancel culture and stand up to it. I don't need my politicians using force to violate people's rights to, quote, stand up to cancel culture. And if you think Ted Cruz is your friend, and this goes to anyone out there, you like Ted Cruz, you like what he's become, you're basically getting married to somebody who's a known cheater. You are getting with somebody who has been demonstrated to be a fair weather friend that will stab you in the back as soon as it's convenient.
I'll pull up the world debt clock. We know how much Ted Cruz and the previous administration did to cut the national debt, right? I mean, that was a big Tea Party Ted Cruz idea: stop the spending, cut the spending. So another example of a failure, abduction of those principles.
Ted Cruz does have one single principle uniting all of his actions. As contradictory as those actions are to us, it's power. That's all he wants, is power. Screw him. He's typical political classman.
Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Robert Stubberfield is correcting me. It's Martin Anderson, who was a student of Ayn Rand's, who went to, I think I said Martin Armstrong. He's a financier. I'm so sorry. Thank you, Robert, for all of your scholarship and for correcting me. Martin Anderson went to Washington, helped abolish the draft thanks to Ayn Rand's influence. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Martin Anderson. And I still had to register for it when I turned 18, but thank God I never got called up to go, because I would not have gone.
Wow, a hippy dippy host on the Daily Objective. I'm joking.
They would have had to arrest me.
Yeah.
We want to remind everyone about any announcements about membership, Ruck? You want to?
We're about to jump over to Clubhouse as soon as we're done here. By the way, please consider becoming an Ayn Rand Center UK member. You get obviously you get to support this thing and help it grow. We can get more guests, more great content, and also we can give you exclusive content. We got study groups, all types of behind the paywall types of stuff. And unlike big tech, we are a emerging entity. So come on, guys, stick it to big tech, right? Or big tech wins. I'm joking, of course, being a little bit facetious, but we are the part that's true is that we are small and growing steadily. I'm happy to see the live viewers has risen over time. The view count has risen over time. Obviously, subscriber count has risen, but it does take money to promote this thing, to get more guests that bring us viewers and all types of stuff. We're hoping, and Razi is going to do so. Hook us up with some dollars and cents, or pounds, as you folks call it in the UK. I guess we're ready to jump over to Clubhouse. I guess I'll just say in closing, remember that politics is not the battle, in essence. At the end of the day, it's the culture. The culture gives us the politicians that the culture wants. And the culture, in response to Obama, wanted sort of lip service to the free market or elements of the free market. But at this point, do you see that? Ultimately, it's the culture that needs to really believe in these things, or else all we're going to get is fake capitalists and actors in Washington. And actors should not be in Washington. They should be here on the Daily Objective. Thank you, everybody. Jump over to Clubhouse, and we'll see you there. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, man.
And we'll be back here for the Daily Objective, same time tomorrow. Goodbye.